Ever feel like you're just drowning in tech news, trying to figure out what actually matters?
Oh, absolutely. It's constant.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. That's why we're here, though. Today, we're gonna, dive deep into Azure Functions. It's a really key piece of the modern cloud puzzle.
Definitely a big one.
Our mission really is to unpack what they are, why they even exist, and how they're solving actual problems for developers, for businesses, building those responsive serverless apps everyone's talking about.
Right. Getting beyond the buzzword.
Exactly. Okay, so let's get into it. At its core, Azure Functions is what they call a serverless compute service. Now, serverless can be a bit confusing.
Doesn't literally mean no servers.
Right. It means you don't have to manage them. The platform handles it. It runs these small bits of code functions, logically enough.
Yeah, focused pieces of logic.
And they only run like when something specific happens, an event.
Exactly. It's event-driven. That could be an HTTP request coming in, maybe a timer you've set, or even like a new file landing in Azure Blob storage.
Okay. And the big win here is no infrastructure management.
That's a huge part of it. No provisioning servers, no patching operating systems. It also scales automatically, like instantly.
And you only pay for the compute time you actually use, right? Down to the millisecond almost?
Precisely. Pay-per execution. So if your function isn't running, you're generally not paying for compute. It's super efficient for tasks that aren't running 24/7.
That makes sense. So why did this come about? What problems were people facing before functions?
Well, think about those event-driven scenarios before. Maybe processing uploads or handling occasional API calls. You often had to keep a server or maybe a virtual machine running all the time,
Just waiting.
just waiting, which meant resources were underutilized, costs were higher than they needed to be, and scaling could get really complicated, especially for sudden bursts.
Right, you'd over-provision just in case.
Exactly. Developers were spending way too much time on the plumbing, the infrastructure, instead of the actual application logic.
And then Azure Functions basically said, we'll handle the plumbing.
Pretty much. It gives you that serverless environment, handles the scaling automatically, provisions resources just when needed, and that pay-per execution model directly tackles the cost inefficiency for those sporadic workloads.
It also said like it makes connecting things easier. You mentioned triggers.
Yes, triggers and bindings, they really cut down on boilerplate code. Instead of writing custom code to, say, monitor a queue or connect to a database, you just configure it.
So less middleware, less glue code to maintain.
Significantly less. It lets teams move faster, experiment more easily. You're not bogged down by the infrastructure concerns.
This really shifts the focus then.
Completely. It's all about the code, the business value you're trying to deliver, not wrestling with servers. It's incredibly empowering, especially for, smaller teams or startups.
Okay, let's talk features. You mentioned triggers. Those are the start buttons.
Yeah, the on switch, basically. An HTTP trigger starts a function when a web request comes in perfect for APIs. A timer trigger runs it on a schedule. A blob trigger fires when a file is uploaded or updated in Azure storage. Lots of options.
And bindings, that sounds like data connection.
It is. Bindings simplify how your function gets data in and sends data out. Instead of writing code to connect to, say, Cosmos DB or read from a service bus queue, you declare a binding.
So the platform handles fetching the data or sending the result.
Exactly. It makes interacting with other Azure services incredibly straightforward.
Yeah.
Less code, fewer potential bugs, faster development.
Like that image resizing example, a blob trigger starts it. Maybe an output binding saves the resized image back to block storage.
Precisely. All triggered automatically, with minimal code focused just on the resizing logic itself. Or handling thousands of API requests without managing a fleet of web servers. It just scales.
Okay, it does sound powerful, but there have to be trade-offs, considerations.
Of course. No tool is perfect for everything. Functions are generally designed for shorter tasks. The default timeout is 5 minutes.
You can extend that, though.
You can, up to 10 minutes on the consumption plan, or longer on premium plans. But, if you have a really long, heavy computation, functions might not be the ideal fit.
Gotcha. What else? I've heard about cold starts.
Right, that's mainly a consideration for the consumption plan, the truly pay-as-you-go one. If a function hasn't run in a while, it might take a second or two longer to start up the first time it's invoked. That's the cold start.
Which could be an issue for latency-sensitive apps.
It could be, yeah, for very low-traffic apps or those needing instant response. But the premium plans offer pre-warmed instances that eliminate cold starts, though they do have a baseline cost.
So you have options depending on your needs.
Exactly. And while it's cost-effective, you do need to watch out. If you have functions running very frequently or for longer durations, those costs can add up. So monitoring usage with Azure Cost Management is important.
Understanding the limits is key then. Use it where it shines.
Absolutely. It's about picking the right tool for the job. Functions are amazing for event-driven scenarios, APIs, scheduled tasks, data processing pipelines, but maybe not for a long-running monolithic process.
So bringing it all together, what's the big takeaway here? Well, it really feels like Azure Functions let developers build these super responsive, scalable, efficient applications without getting bogged down by servers. It's about focusing on the code, the logic.
That's the core value, I think, abstracting away the infrastructure.
So here's something to think about. What possibilities really open up for you, for your projects, when you can just focus purely on your application's logic? No server patching, no scaling worries. How might that freedom change how you innovate, how quickly you can bring ideas to life?